In today's lesson, Double Angle Identities, Chapter 7.2, Quiz 7.2. The question is as follows. Find the exact value of sine of 2 theta, cosine of 2 theta, and tangent of 2 theta, and the quadrant in which 2 theta lies. So very similar to the previous problems. Okay? We need to find sine of theta. Again, this is a different problem, so don't look at this one yet. Let's concentrate on this one. So cosine of theta is x over r. Well, that means that 5 over 13 implies that x equals 5 and r equals 13. In order to find sine of theta, we need y. Using the formula, y equals square root of r squared minus x squared. We plug it in, we get 13 squared minus 5 squared, and that's the square root of 169 minus 25. Okay, so let's scroll down. 169 minus 25 is 169 minus 25 is 144. Sorry about that. So the square root of 144. And the square root of 144 is 12. So sine of theta, in this case, is 12 over 13. Now, we need to find tangent of theta. Tangent of theta, remember, is y over x. Well, what's y? Y is 12, and x is 5. Now we need to find the double angle formulas. So sine of 2 theta, let's start with that. Sine of 2 theta is equal to 2 times sine of theta cosine of theta, which is equal to 2 times sine of theta, which is 12 over 13, times cosine, which is 5 over 13. That's equal to, well, we can make 2 into a fraction. We multiply. So we got 2 times 12 times 5, which is 120. And 13 times 13 is 169. And that will be sine of theta. Now for cosine of 2 theta, is cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. What is that equal to? Well, what's cosine? Again, cosine is 12, it's 5 over 13 squared minus 12 over 13 squared. What is that equal to? Well, 5 over 13 squared is 25 over 169 minus 144 over 169, which gives us 25 minus 144 is negative 119 over 169. And that will be cosine of 2 theta. As for tangent of 2 theta, you could use the formula, or just remember this is sine of 2 theta over cosine of 2 theta, which is equal to, well, we just found sine of 2 theta. That's 120 over 169. And then cosine of 2 theta, which is negative 119 over 169. And that's equal to, multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator, so 120 over 169 times negative 169 over 119. Notice that 169 divided by 169 is 1, so it's going to be negative 120 over 119. And that will be the entire problem. Now they're asking us where does 2 theta lie? Well, again, if cosine of 2 theta is a negative number, right? This is negative, and sine is positive, that means that 2 theta belongs in the second quadrant. Now we do the same process for the next problem. Okay, let's use a different color for this one. Tangent of theta equals negative 15 over 8, and theta is in the quadrant 2. Now we know that by definition this is y over x. Now if theta is in quadrant 2, that means that x is negative and y is positive. So y equals positive 15 and x equals negative 8. Now we're missing r. So r is the square root of x squared plus y squared. So the square root, so negative 8 squared plus 15 squared. Negative 8 squared is 64. 15 squared is 225. Plus 64. 289. So the square root of 289, 289 square root, that's 17. So now we have to find cosine of theta equals x over r, which is negative 8 over 17, and sine of theta, which is y over r, equals 15 over 17. And now we can find our identities. So we start with sine of 2 theta, which is equal to 2 sine of theta cosine of theta, which is equal to 2 times 15 over 17 times negative 8 over 17. Put a 1 in the bottom. Now we multiply. So 2 times 15 times 8 is negative 240 over 17 times 17, which is 289. Let's do the same thing for cosine. So cosine of 2 theta is cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. Cosine is negative 8 over 17, so this is negative 8 over 17 squared minus, well, what's sine squared? Sine is 15 over 17. This becomes 64 over 289 minus 15 squared, which is 225 over 289. 64 minus 225 is negative 161 over 289. Now again, similar to the previous example, tangent of 2 theta equals sine of 2 theta over cosine of 2 theta, which is equal to, well, sine of 2 theta is negative 240 over 289. And cosine of 2 theta is negative 161 over 289. Which gives me, so we multiply by the reciprocal, erase that negative. $161, which is equal to positive 240 over 161. Now, since both cosine and sine are negative, right? That means that 2 theta is in the third quadrant. Now, for our last example, sine of theta equals negative square root of 10 over 10. Theta is in the quadrant 4. If, again, this is y over r, that means that y equals negative square root of 10 and r equals 10. So we need to find x. X equals to square root of r squared minus y squared. This becomes 10 squared minus the square root of 10 squared. Oh, minus here. 10 squared is 100. The negative square root of 10 squared is 10. So this becomes the square root of 90. Now, since we are in the quadrant 4, x is positive. So let's find cosine. So cosine of theta is x over r. That makes it square root of 90 over 10. Now we can simplify square root of 90, right? This is the square root of 9 times the square root of 10, which is 3 radical 10. So that becomes 3 radical 10 over 10. Now we can proceed with sine and cosine. Let me change the color, forgot to do that. So sine of 2 theta, again, is 2 times sine of theta cosine of theta. This is 2 times sine. Sine is negative radical 10 over 10. And cosine is 3 radical 10 over 10. We make this into a fraction. 2 times negative times 3 is negative 6. Radical 10 times radical 10 is radical 100 over 100. Now, radical 100 is 10. So negative 6 times 10 over 100, which is negative 60 over 100, which is negative 6 over 10, which is negative 3/5. Now for cosine, cosine of 2 theta is cosine squared minus sine squared. Cosine squared will be 3 radical 10 over 10 squared minus sine squared, which is negative radical 10, over 10 squared. Now, 3 squared is 9. Square root of 10 squared is 10. 10 squared is 100 minus negative square root of 10 squared is 10. And 10 squared is 100. Becomes 90 minus 10 over 100, which is 80 over 10, which can be simplified 8 over 10. Over 100, sorry. 8 over 10, which is 2/5. Now for tangent of 2 theta is the same thing as sine of 2 theta over cosine of 2 theta. Sine of 2 theta is negative 3/5. Cosine of 2 theta is 2/5. We multiply by the reciprocal. We have negative 3/5 times 5 over 2. 5 over 5 is 1, so you're left with negative 3/2. Now, since cosine of 2 theta is greater than 0 and sine of 2 theta is less than 0, and that means that 2 theta is in the fourth quadrant. And that will be all. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below or ask me in class. Thank you.